Kaylee, as you know, the country has hit 200,000 deaths from the coronavirus. What do you say to Americans who are outraged over this and blame this administration for so many lives lost in this country?
Well, as you've heard several doctors in the task force note from this podium, we are looking at the prospect of 2 million people potentially perishing from the coronavirus in this country. We grieve when even one life is lost, but the fact that we have that we have come nowhere near that number is a testament to this president taking immediate action, to shutting down travel from China when the other party, Democrats, were saying that was xenophobic, for shutting down travel for Europe, for developing landmark therapeutics that are working like remdesivir. And when you look at the fact that excess mortality, Europe has experienced a 28% higher excess mortality rate than the United States. It's a testament to the hard work done by the task force and this president.
And if you don't mind, if I could follow up, last night the president said at one of his rallies about the virus, and I think he was talking about younger Americans, he said it affects virtually nobody. By the way, open your schools, everybody open your schools. But he said to Bob Woodward, it's not just older people, it's young people too. At 200,000 deaths, shouldn't the president be telling people the truth about this virus at his rallies?
The president is telling people the truth, and you're right, Jim, that he was talking about.
He's saying that it affects virtually nobody and that it doesn't affect young people. He's not telling the truth.
Jim, but you're again taking the president out of context. I have his full quote here, and you're right that he was referring to young people. He said this.
Well, then I'm not taking it out of context. If I said he was talking about younger people, then I'm not taking it out of context.
You are taking it out of context because you're making an assertion that he's not giving critical information when in fact he is. And I will underscore exactly what he said. And he said this, in some states, thousands of people, and they've had nobody young, below the age of 18, like nobody. They have a strong immune system. That is factually true. You can go to the American Academy of Pediatrics website, the Children's Hospital Association, and they list out a number of states that have had zero pediatric deaths.
The coronavirus and then spread it to older people.
And
we've known this since the very beginning. And for the President of the United States at 200,000 deaths, to go out to his rallies and say something like it virtually affects nobody, and that in some states it's not affecting young people, that is glossing over the fact and really diminishing the fact that young people can catch this virus and spread it to older people. Younger people can also be sickened and killed by this virus.
Jim, do you have the quote there with you?
I have the quote here, yes.
Yes, it is exactly as I just read it to you, that in several states they have had zero pediatric deaths. I have the entire list here: Arkansas, Delaware, District of Columbia, Iowa, Hawaii, Idaho, Kansas, and the list goes on. And as you may not know, Jim, the COVID has a 0.01% mortality rate for people under the age of 18. So it is not a disease that affects young people in the same way as older people, which is the exact point the president was making last night. Yes.
One person, Kaylee, who does believe that the president has the constitutional authority to make a nomination for the Supreme Court and that the Senate has the constitutional obligation to provide advice and consent is Utah Senator Mitt Romney. In the course of the last 3.5 years, the president and Romney have often found themselves at odds, have said unkind, if not intemperate things about each other. How is the president feeling about Mitt Romney today?
I haven't spoken to him about Senator Romney, but Senator Romney is recognizing what any of us who take a clear-eyed look at precedent recognize, that the precedent is on our side here. 29 times has there been an appointment during an election year, 29 times. And when you break down those numbers, 19 times when those nominations were made, the Senate and the president were of the same party. 17 of those 19 times, that nominee went on to be confirmed. The 10 times when it was a difference in party between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the presidency, only 2 went on to be confirmed. So precedent is on our side, but Democrats are trying to have it both ways here. And I would cite Dan McLaughlin at National Review, who said this, and he's exactly right: choosing not to fill a vacancy would be a historically unprecedented act of unilateral disarmament.
So let me just follow up on that if I could. So timing now is the next issue. The president will have 37 to 38 days from the time he makes the announcement to the last time that he could have a vote before the election. Past years, John Paul Stevens was nominated and confirmed in 19 days. Chief Justice John Roberts, 24. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor in 33. Times were different back then than they are now. Can you do it in 37 days?
We certainly believe we can. You've heard very optimistic words from Senator Graham.
And how will you do it?
Well, we will go about this the way we always have, by putting forward a Constitution-abiding textualist originalist that we believe the American people will appreciate, and we believe will get through the approval process, the nomination and confirmation process, I should say, quite quickly.
The president recently gave himself an A+ for his handling of COVID, but a D for his PR. What would good PR look like when 200,000 Americans are dead?
What the president was saying is that he wants to make sure that we get good information to the American people. That's something that I think we've done. And this president...
He's provided information at times that was not true. He said he was downplaying it, so purposefully he was providing information at times that was not fully
That's
true.
absolutely inaccurate. The president never downplayed critical health information. The president never downplayed our COVID response. And you can just see that by the historic effort that we've put forward. And I would also point you to Dr. Fauci, who said, I don't recall anything different in our discussions with the president, that he said things quite similarly in public. And he was asked directly by none other than John Roberts, did you ever get the sense that he was or wasn't playing this down? No, I didn't. And that's an assertion echoed by the vice president. Our response, when you look, that 100 million tests that we've exceeded, the vaccine on record pace, the therapeutics, the fact that we've brought fatality down by 85%. This was a novel pathogen that came in for which there were no tests and there were no identified therapeutics, but they were identified very quickly. And also with regard to the vaccine, when you look at the notion that we are manufacturing this at commercial levels, which I was told by Dr. Salawi that normally takes years to do, and we're already producing, the goal is 100 million doses by the end of the year. That's a testament to this president and his response.
If none of these vaccines are effective, what is Plan B for the White House?
Look, you're asking a hypothetical. We have 6 vaccines. We have 6 American vaccines that we've identified, 3 of them in phase 3 clinical trial. There's also one, well, we're getting there, and by the end of the year is the goal. And when you say...
What would we do if they're not approved? We all hope for good news, but what if they're not approved? What would the White House do?
We have 6 candidates. We are a strong belief that we will identify one, hopefully more than one, working vaccine by the end of the year, producing them in advance. We already have a distribution plan. And when you compare this, I think context matters. Ebola taking 14 months to get to phase 3 clinical trial. We already have 2 candidates in phase 3 clinical trial. Ebola took 3 years to get to completion. We will have done this in under a year, the fastest rate for a novel pathogen in history.
Again, we've marked the fact that 200,000 Americans have died from the coronavirus. Could you again try to reconcile the president telling Bob Woodward that plenty of young people, quote his words, plenty of young people are affected by the coronavirus, with him saying last night in front of a crowd that virtually nobody young dies and gets affected by this virus? I'm wondering if you could just reconcile those two. Why did he tell Bob Woodward that plenty of young people are impacted by this virus, but not say that in front of a crowd?
Well, as you know, this was a novel pathogen. We now know a lot more about COVID today. And the president actually said that in a speech last night, right before the comments he made. He said, we now know a lot more about the virus, and we know that elderly people, particularly those with comorbidities, are affected by it. And we know that young people are by and large, and in some states, there's been no young people that have succumbed to this disease. And I've listed off a few of the states for you. And we know that a very, very small percentage of those under 18 have actually perished because of COVID. And it was a novel pathogen. Now we know a lot more about it, who it affects, who our most vulnerable are, which is why we've surged testing to communities that are vulnerable, and will continue to make sure that our elderly, those with comorbidities, are protected. Yes.
And not continuing to try to not have panic. He told Bob Woodward that he wanted to downplay it and play it down to not cause panic. You don't think he's doing that still?
The president has never downplayed critical health information. Dr. Fauci, as I noted to you, said point blank, no, he didn't, and that's an assertion that Vice President Pence, who led the task force, made as well.
I also wanted to follow up on the speech the president prepared for the UN General Assembly. He hit China really hard, and the Chinese ambassador, in introducing President Xi, responded accusing the president of bullying, protectionism, and unilateralism. I'm wondering what the White House response is to that, and then how concerned is this White House that this growing rift between the world's 2 largest economies is going to hurt the efforts to combat coronavirus?
Let me just say, nothing has hurt the efforts to combat the coronavirus more than China concealing information about COVID-19 from the very beginning. What China did was inexcusable. In partnership with the WHO, hid critical information about transmission of COVID from us, about the severity of COVID, not just from us, but from the world. There's no bigger bully than China when it comes to COVID, and that's pretty clear. And just look at what happened at the WHO.
The president does hit China pretty hard, specifically on China's slave labor practices and ethnic cleansing. But then, interestingly, he dives into their environmental record. China dumps millions and millions of tons of plastic and trash into the oceans, overfishes other countries' waters, destroys vast swaths of coral reefs, and emits more toxic mercury into the atmosphere than any country anywhere in the world. How responsive have the United States' allies been to this message from the president and on confronting China on these fronts in particular?
Yeah, I would say the world is unified in condemning some of the human rights violations by China. And also I would note, just on the issue of CO2 emissions, there's no bigger emitter than China itself.